Mr. Elliot Pfebve.
Yes, good evening,
Good,
Mr. Dereck.
good evening. How are you?
No, I'm okay, and you?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Good.
Right. So the reason I'm calling you is that I've done a few videos on board notes, which the government of Zimbabwe is preparing to print and put into circulation in Zimbabwe. But I listened to you the other day, and you had a different explanation, and I thought this might help a lot of Zimbabweans to understand what the government is trying to do. So, to begin with, um, what are bond notes?
Yes. Uh, Actually, I've realized that many Zimbabweans, yes, they know that bond notes are coming, okay, through the government,
Uh-huh.
but there's still some ignorance there as to what are bond notes,
Uh-huh.
which is understandable because they don't have to know it,
Uh-huh.
because there's no country
Yeah.
in the whole world using bond notes as a legal tender,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now let me explain what they are. Now, bond notes, they are financial instruments
Uh-huh.
which are a source of finance.
Okay. Can I
Eh,
also call them a debt instrument?
yes,
Okay.
you can call them debt instruments, is the same. And again, later on, I'll actually distinguish. There are various types of bonds.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you can call them debt instruments. Sometimes some other books they call them loan notes.
Uh-huh.
It's the same,
Okay.
right? And now there's nothing wrong for any government,
Uh-huh.
let alone Zimbabwe, to use bond notes for capitalization.
Uh-huh.
It depends what you want to use them for. Okay. Normally, let me explain the basis of the bond note.
Uh-huh.
There's fiscal policy, which is by the government.
Uh-huh.
Then there's a monetary policy, which is by the central bank.
Yeah.
And the monetary policy, in this case, if we got specific to Zimbabwe, this is our Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
They deal with the monetary policy.
Yeah.
The government deals with the fiscal policy. Now, the difference with that is that the monetary policy deals with the circulation of money within an economy.
Uh-huh.
And the role of the central bank, which is the Reserve Bank, is to make sure that there is enough money circulating within an economy.
Uh-huh.
Enough money, not more than necessary. It will also have to intervene.
Yeah.
I'll come back to the bond notes, because this is where the bond note comes into it. Not too little money circulating,
Uh-huh.
because that's not good for the economy. And this is where the bond note comes into as well.
Uh-huh.
I'll come back to that. Now, in terms of the fiscal policy, which is the government, we are now talking about in terms of taxation, in terms of import tariffs.
Uh-huh.
So yes, those are the areas of fiscal policy where the government can intervene.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let us be very specific now to the bond notes as far as the Zimbabwean perspective is concerned, which is the monetary policy by the Reserve Bank. I'm very surprised that Chinamasa has been the person in the forefront of advocating for the bond notes, because financially and economically it is not his role.
Uh-huh.
It is the role of the central bank, because that is a monetary policy. Namasa's role is a fiscal policy, which has nothing to do with the circulation of money. Now, let's go back to what are they, and how do other governments use the bond notes? Right. The central bank use the bond notes, which sometimes are called also certificates of deposits or gilts. Right?
Yeah.
What I mean by that is that if there's too much money circulating in an economy, that actually can cause an inflation. So the government moves in through the central bank. So the central bank would then issue what we call the bonds. Right?
Okay.
These bonds are certificates with a value. I know from a Zimbabwe perspective, they want to bring a $5 bonds, bond notes, $10 bond notes, $100 bond notes. That's it. That is not the way.
So that is current now.
That is current. That is not a bond.
Okay.
When you talk about a bond, you are talking about bonds. Normally, you issue a certificate with a value, okay? And it's very rare that you get a certificate which is less than 50,000 US dollars. Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So 50,000, 100,000 US dollars. So the government would print the certificates and then sell them to the public. Okay? The reason is that, let's say, for example, you, Dereck, you've got your 100,000. Okay? And the government realized that there's so much money circulating in the economy.
So they want to collect that money.
Correct. So they will print the certificates, sell them to the public, so you buy, but they have to put some incentives into it. It's not just about you surrendering your 100,000. They'll say, okay, fine. If you can buy this bond note, which is 100,000, we'll give you 5% interest every year on the 100,000
until they mature.
And then every bond certificate will have what we call the redeemable date. So it will be 5 years, 10 years. So we'll say, okay, fine. We'll give you this certificate. You give us 100,000. Every year we give you 5% interest. But after 5 years, we give you back your 100,000 in full. So the incentive there is for you to get the interest.
To get the interest every year.
And at the end of the redeemable debt, you also get the full amount. That's how the bonds work.
So this is an attempt by government to clean up the excess money in the economy.
Correct.
But could they also be looking for money? Could they also be trying to borrow from the public?
It did. Now, how do they borrow from the public? Well, by selling you the certificate, they are borrowing from the public. Okay? So the government becomes the issuer.
Yeah.
Right? And you becomes the owner of the bond certificate. So that's how they borrow money from the citizens.
Yeah.
Right?
So is that domestic debt?
Yeah. Yes, more of domestic debt. But however, if there's not enough money circulating in the economy, what does the government do in terms of injecting money into the economy? They buy back the bond certificates. So they give you back your money so that that money circulates in the economy.
So does it make sense that Zimbabwe, which is struggling with circulation of money, would be trying to get money from people?
It is actually the opposite.
Mm.
It doesn't make money at all. It doesn't make any sense. As I said, that because if the government prints some bond certificates, okay, and then sell them to the public, then what they are going to do is that they are actually going to make the situation of monetary circulation worse, because they are taking money from the circulation and putting it in the government coffers. Okay? It should be the opposite. So, but now the problem is the government doesn't have any bonds held by Zimbabwean citizens up there or companies, where they can then say, okay, we are then buying the certificates and giving you cash so that we can engage, we can inject cash in the economy. They don't have that, because we are actually coming from a hyperinflation where we surrendered our only legal tender Zimbabwean notes in favor of a US currency. Now, many people might ask then, what is the logic behind? Okay? Now, I'm sure you remember that we have got we actually had bearer notes, 2009, 2008.
Yes.
Okay? Those bearer notes were actually bearer bonds.
Okay.
Okay? And people don't know that because the government decided not to call them bearer bonds. They called them bearer notes. But in financial terms and economic terms, those were bearer bonds.
But they were using them as currency.
Correct. And what does that mean? Because when you talk about bearer bonds, you're talking about to say, okay, fine. The person who buys the bonds doesn't have to be registered. So the reason is it becomes easy to sell the bond to the next person. Okay? So let's say, for example, you buy a bond certificate from Zimbabwean government, from Chinamas. And then the government decided not to register you. So the government has no idea as to who bought the 10,000 bond certificate. By the virtue that you hold that certificate, you can sell it across. You can sell it to somebody else. You can sell it to me. Okay, the ownership transfers to me.
Okay,
is the person who have got the certificate who can claim at the end of maturity.
Okay.
So, in other words, it becomes easily tradable because there are no hurdles of applications to change the ownership of that bond. So this is now where so that aspect of the bond or that type of bond is called a bearer bond. So Zimbabwe in 2008, 2009 actually took that loophole in terms of the financial definition of a bearer bond. Say, oh, we can actually introduce a bearer note without registering people, so people can use it as currency. And this is exactly what they are trying to do now. Because they are saying, okay, fine, but mind you, they are not talking about bearer notes or bearer bond. But in essence, it is not a bond that they are introducing in Zimbabwe. It is a bearer bond.
Okay. Which is going to work like a currency.
Correct. For as long as it's going to work like a current, then it's a bearer bond.
Right. So I understand that Afrexim Bank is giving us a $200 million loan facility for the bearer bonds, bearer notes, or bearer bonds.
Yeah.
How is Afrexim Bank benefiting from this arrangement?
Now, normally what happens is there's confusion within this Zimbabwean monetary policy. Okay, in the sense that there is the bond that they're introducing is a bearer bond. The bearer bond does not necessarily need any asset security. Okay. However, the ordinary bond, okay, that one, ordinary bond, you can have an ordinary bond which is called convertible bond.
Yeah, I think Cuba has got those.
So the convertible bonds are those with the security, right? Where you say you are borrowing money, and then the bank might need security. Or if the government is borrowing money from me, I need security from the government in the event that they fail to pay back the money.
Yes.
So this is where it is coming from. So that 200 million is to say, in the event that the government fails to pay you, right? So it's working like a certificate to the international money market. Zimbabwe is portraying itself as, yes, we want to borrow money from Zimbabweans. But we want security in the event that this project doesn't work. Can you see where it is coming from?
Yeah.
Which is the same as say, I'm going to give you a certificate, so the government is giving you a certificate.
Yeah.
So you're lending money to the government. And then the government will say, and then you are going to say, okay, fine. In the event that you, the government, is unable to pay me back, what will happen? So the government will say, in the event that we are unable to pay you back, we've got 200 million security guarantee in US. So we can revert back to US to give you money back.
Okay, so what do you make then of the government explanation that the 200 million facility, okay, for the bond notes, according to them, is an export incentive for exporters who will get 5% of the revenue they bring in when they export products to other countries?
Look, I think those are just sort of a propaganda from a desperate government. Okay, we are using a US dollar, right? And it's a foreign currency in its own right already.
Yes.
Right? There's no incentives that you need to give to somebody who is buying.
You've already got a US dollar.
Right? And exporting and getting the US dollar. Okay? What we have at the moment is that we have got imports of 5.5 billion US dollars. And then we've got an export of 3 billion.
Yeah.
So we've got about 3.5 billion deficit. But that deficit has nothing to do with the fact that we are using US dollar. The fact of the matter is that many of our companies have collapsed because of government policies. We are not a favorable country for destination for foreign direct investment, even for domestic investment. And through policies like the indigenization policies that Kasukuwere and Robert Mugabe were peddling, which at the end of the day forced many companies to close and put people in the street. So in terms of capitalization of our industry, has nothing to do with the bond. It actually has something to do with the US dollar.
Okay.
The bond itself is actually a negative incentive for capitalization.
Okay. Right. So one of the explanations that have been doing the rounds is that maybe because the dollar is it's sought after by a lot of people. We know that the dollar is one of the most powerful currencies.
Yes.
So everyone wants it, which is why you see that Nigerians are coming in, Zambians are coming in, South Africans, everyone wants to come and get that US dollar.
Yes.
So to avoid that US dollar leaving the country, so introducing the bearer notes will ensure that we have at least 200 million, which is still in circulation within the country. But what I don't know is whether the ordinary person can go and buy tomatoes with bearer notes, since it's an export incentive. I don't know how you incentivize someone with something which is less valuable than the US dollar, although they say it's 1:1.
Well, again, thank you for that question, because I think I'm going to clarify that and it will become very apparent. The fact that at the end the government is saying the reason why we've got a cash problem in Zimbabwe is because we're using a US dollar, okay? And then the bond notes would actually alleviate that. Okay, let me make it very clear. Yes, Zimbabwe is the only country in Africa that is using US dollar. Okay, of course that becomes a magnet.
Yeah, for other nationalities.
For consumption. For consumption, not for export, but for consumption within the African continent.
Because you can now afford.
So everybody want to send or to export their goods to Zimbabwe from an African perspective, because they get the greenback. We can understand that. So you then become a net importer.
Yeah.
Okay? We can understand that. But on the other side, that's an advantage for Zimbabwe. Because Zimbabwe should now be the most competitive destination for foreign direct investment. Why I'm saying so is that every investor anywhere in the world would want to put their money in Zimbabwe, knowing that US dollar is a stable currency. That any investment that they put in Zimbabwe will realize US dollar, which is easily convertible, which then outweigh the imports. Because the imports, any government can control the imports through the tariffs, introducing tariffs. To say, if you are going to import these goods, they will attract so much tariffs. Okay, they can control that.
Do you want to quickly comment on the statutory instrument 64 while you're at it?
Yeah. Okay. The introducing import tariffs, right? Like the instrument 64, the introducing tariffs.
But that one is it's more like a ban, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a tariff.
Yeah. Let me get to it drilled down. Okay. Every government in the world, they control what is coming in and what is going out.
Yeah.
Okay. Depending on their demands, and also depending on their consumption capacity. Okay? Now, Zimbabwe's Section 6 of 2016, right, is in bad taste. Why am I saying it's in bad taste? It's basically saying that Zimbabweans cannot import into the country commodities which are even in short supply in Zimbabwe. Not only that, which are also, okay, they've introduced competition. So it tends to supply and demand, it tends to drive the prices down. And who benefits are the Zimbabweans, okay? So this is why you find they've banned building materials, and the Zimbabweans were able to build decent houses because of prices, supply and demand of these commodities and the products coming from South Africa, from Botswana, etc., which then drove prices down, which was a benefit to Zimbabweans. And at the end, it's a benefit to the government, and the government doesn't see that.
Yeah.
Not only that, but if you look at it, who owns most of those companies that are being protected?
The vice president?
The vice presidents, the cabinet ministers, Mugabe himself, because he owns some Gushungo Dairy and all this, and they are protecting their own empire. This is where the anger comes into, okay? And not only that, the Mugabe or the ZANU-PF government is failing to understand that they are not an island. They are part of SADC. They are part of African Union. And there is also some SADC trade agreement which they have to comply with. And it includes the free movement of goods. So Zimbabwe, apart from curtailing their own citizens, they are also in violation of the SADC protocols of free movements.
Unless there is a Zimbabwe exit from SADC.
Indeed. Yeah. And assuming that they understand what exit from SADC means.
Yeah. Can I just clarify, or can I ask you to clarify one thing? Because some people seem to think that the Stationary Instrument 64 of 2016 is not a ban, but what they are saying is you need to get a license to trade to import these goods. So my question is, was there no license before? And if there's a license, how much is that license?
No, it's a ban, because the license have been there before anyway. So for you to import any goods, whether you are going to import within the SADC region, there were licenses, and but those licenses would depend whether you are importing from SADC. So if it's SADC, then of course they would fall under the SADC trade agreement of free trade. If they are ECOWAS, that's something else. If they are EU or Asia, that's something else. So the licensing authority has always been there, and so it's not true that the reason why they did that is to introduce license, because those were already there.
Maybe they're fundraising. It's a new way of fundraising by charging for the new license.
But look at it from this. Yes, the government is desperate in terms of, this is why they are unable to pay salaries. They are actually unable to pay salaries in time, even for the police and the army, which is a very dangerous precedence. And of course, the other civil servants, they are marginalized, etc., etc. And they are trying to find a way of raising money. Even in terms of this bond, it's not sincere that the introduction of the bond notes is to alleviate cash circulation in the country. But the fact of the matter is that the government want to raise money.
Or maybe they want to secure enough to pay civil servants in bond.
Indeed, in a way. Because what happened, you need to understand that 2008, 2009, the government actually invaded the individual bank accounts and emptied the coffers to fund their recurrent expenditure. Okay? And up to now, they haven't paid that. 10 years later, they haven't managed to pay back. All right? What they want to do, they know that money is there in Zimbabwe. It's not only in circulation, but it's there. People are hiding the monies under the beds, wherever they are putting them, but the money is there.
Yeah.
So what they want to do is they want to raid Zimbabwean accounts, right?
By replacing it with bond notes.
Let's say, for example, you've got 100,000 in Barclays Bank in Zimbabwe. Okay? The government is going to Barclays Bank and say,
give us that money.
Yeah, Dereck has got 100,000 US dollars, right? We need that money to pay for salaries for the army.
We give him bonds.
Right? And then here is the bond. If he wants money, give him bonds. Okay? That's exactly what is going to happen.
Not certificates, but bond.
No. You get bond money.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what is going to happen is that people are not going to put money in the bank anymore. Right? Because if you put US dollars, the next thing, if you go to the bank, they'll give you bond. Okay? Now we have a problem of even worsening the scenario of money circulation, because people then would not put money in the bank. But I can see a situation. This will only work if the government is going to enforce. In other words, to empower the police, search your properties for money under the bed, in your bedrooms, in your pockets. That's the only way they can enforce it. I don't see how it will work. Okay. And they were lied, because they were saying, "Oh, we are not taking away the US dollar as a legal tender. It will still be there." But the question is, who would want to go to the bank and say, "I don't want US dollar, I want bond notes"? Who would do that?
Right. I've got, I don't know if you can answer this one. Do you think there's a link between the IMF staff monitoring program and the behavior of the Reserve Bank and the Finance Ministry? Do you think they are taking instructions from, or is it part of the staff monitoring program?
No. The IMF and the World Bank wouldn't be so stupid to prescribe such a type of approach in terms of monetary policy. What I know very well is that Zimbabwe is in arrears of 1.8 billion. And the World Bank and IMF are just insisting you pay the arrears, so we can start talking and admitting you on the international stage. Okay.
What about the African Development Bank, or is it some country in North Africa that may have promised to provide, to give them a loan to pay a loan?
Yes. What happened is, I know there have been celebration in ZANU-PF to say we have started talking to IMF and World Bank, and things are starting to move, unlike the opposition who have been campaigning against our isolation. Well, I don't know where they are coming from, because the opposition was never involved, and he does not have influence on monetary policy of those countries in any of World Bank or IMF.
Yeah.
But however, the current scenario is that they've got a raise, they have to pay it. Okay?
Yeah.
So you can't say, well, I want to borrow money, give us 1 billion when you still you're in a raise for 1.8 billion. So they said, we have no problem with it. You buy that. You pay the raise first.
Yeah.
Now, ZANU-PF government has been all over trying to find the 1.8 billion, okay? So that they can pay their raise and then they can be in good books again with the international financiers. And this is where they've been, the arrangement, surprisingly enough, with Algeria. So Algeria, I said, well, we can advance you 1.8 billion, but on condition that we don't give you directly the 1.8 billion, because we don't trust that you pay back. We will pay this through the African Development Bank.
Oh, I see.
And then the African Development Bank, which is a subsidiary of World Bank, would then pay the creditors. And who are these creditors? It's the World Bank and IMF.
What about the BRICS?
And Chinese.
The BRICS Bank. You know, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Yeah. Look,
I'm sure they've got a bank now as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they've got a bank.
And also attached to that, the Chinese. They could simply, they are our friends. Why can't they give us 1.8 billion?
You'll be surprised that the Chinese were the first government to welcome the arrangement of Algeria paying to the African Development Bank 1.8 billion, because from the 1.8 billion, part of it is the Chinese money, and China is eyeing some money from there.
So China wants to give us money, but through a loan facility.
No. We owe China money.
Oh, okay.
We owe China money. And China, we have not been forthcoming in paying them. This is why China is no longer interested with Zimbabwe. Actually, China wants to get its money from the 1.8 billion.
Through the African Development Bank.
Correct. So it's all in a mess.
Yeah.
But you need also to understand that, like for example, our 2016 budget is 4 billion. Okay, for the whole country, right? And 3.6 billion of the 4 billion is a recurrent expenditure, which means it has nothing to do with the development or new infrastructure, right? These are salaries of the civil servants and other expenditures which are on a day-to-day basis. Right? New cars, servicing, etc. And then that leaves about 0.4 billion to any other than the recurrent expenditure. 75% of our budget, annual budget, goes to civil servants pay.
But they are not paying them.
Well,
I was looking at it the other day, and I was thinking, if civil servants don't get paid in January, and they get paid maybe mid-February, obviously they are not going to get paid end of February, because that's 2 weeks away, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it means their next salary is now in March.
Yes.
So in 3 months, January, February, March, they've been paid twice.
Yeah.
So if they are paid twice every three months, it means that by the end of the year, they'll probably get paid 8 times in 4 months. So they might actually miss 4 months of pay.
Well, Yeah, I mean, assuming that there's money to pay them. Because, mind you, a budget is a projected budget. It does not necessarily mean that the money is there.
No, it's money that will be collected through taxes and all that.
Yeah, and already the tax regime in Zimbabwe is not enforceable because, like the first half of the year, 6 months of this year, the entire projected tax collection is down by 6%.
Okay.
So it means they have to find 6% of the budget somewhere. And where do they get it from? Okay, we've got a problem already there. Okay, and mind you, that tax put into consideration the shrinking economy already. Yeah.
Right. So another question. In terms of our own currency, what will it take for Zimbabwe to start printing its own money?
Look, I'm very surprised that even the government decided to tender the printing of bond notes to Germany, for example. It shows that they are very much ill-advised. But what they want is, because money or any economy works based on trust.
Very true.
So they are trying to say, if you know that this bond is being printed in Germany with Mercedes-Benz is made
in the same country.
Right. And there's that sort of quasi trust that after all is money.
But they've got a problem with 2008, which is why I think most people don't trust. Even if the bond facility was a noble idea, the fact that they lost that trust in 2008 with the hyperinflation is making it very difficult for them to look at any other financial instrument which might be perceived as going back to 2008 hyperinflationary period where people lost savings. I've got relatives who lost savings. They've been saving in the post office for years.
Yeah.
Only to lose it overnight.
Oh yes.
And I also have people who bought houses or stands just before the hyperinflation. They lost houses and stands because what they got a few months after selling those houses were pieces of paper in the bank.
Yeah.
So could that element of trust, which I think is very important in the economy and also in terms of putting value on money, that trust is gone. And I don't think that this government is the right government to introduce anything to do with money.
I was going to
whether it's a new currency or it's a bond note or whatever you might want to call it.
Yeah.
Even if they back their money with whatever is a secure instrument.
Oh yeah.
Because of that element of trust, they are going to meet. They are going to hit a brick wall.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. Firstly, let me answer your first question as to what does it take for Zimbabwe to have its own currency?
Yes.
Okay. I'm very surprised that they decided to print because our Zimbabwean currency is there. Right? All they needed to do is to put an incentive to say those they can have a cut-off point. Okay, you remember where our $1, $2 when it was still real money.
Yeah,
they read $10, right? And the $20. They would have just put a cut-off point.
Yeah,
to say we are buying back the money. We are putting it back in the circulation.
Yeah, I think they have tried to buy it back, but they didn't put it back in circulation. There was a time when they were advertising that they are buying.
Yeah, but the whole approach and strategy was wrong. It has nothing to do with monetary policy. It was something to do with extracting the gold, the gold, the gold component of the money.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking of to say, okay, fine. We are putting back the Zimbabwean dollar in the economy to alleviate cash crisis. But we will introduce up to either say 1997. Okay, if you have got any currency up to 1997, 20 pounds, etc. Yes, we exchange that 1:1.
Okay.
Okay, so they because there is no a dumping site for money in Zimbabwe.
So the money is there in the house.
Where are they? Where are the millions? So I can assure you, if you have got a 20 Zim dollar, okay?
You'd want to exchange it for 20 US.
Correct. Who would say no to that?
No.
Who would say no to that? You know, they would easily done that.
Yeah.
Say, we are introducing this, but if you have got this, we'll give you US dollars, right? And then they can start using it in circulation. It was going to be a cheaper option. The money is already there. People, they are familiar with the money.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have to outsource the printing aspect of it. And they would introduce it gradually, right?
Yeah.
If I was the Reserve Bank governor of the country, this is where I was going to start.
Yeah.
It's about confidence. This is where they miss the point. It's about the confidence. But even my suggestions assumes that there is confidence out there.
Yeah.
Right? But if you look at it, in a country where you've got a president who is 92 years old, okay? The oldest president in the whole world, right? And you expect investors to have confidence with investing in a country where the leader, they don't know whether tomorrow the leader will still be alive. They have no idea what will happen to that country. You know, there is no succession plan. Yeah.
Or maybe you want a retirement package with that loan.
We are actually in a very dangerous precedent globally. Our greatest problem is Robert Mugabe. Is a 92-year-old hanging on to power.
Right. You also mentioned the cost of making money.
Oh, yes.
Because for every bond note that we are going to receive from Germany,
yeah,
it costs money to print each and every one of them.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And also the Afrexim loan facility. Is that not also a debt instrument? Are we not paying interest on
that? You pay. There's no free money anywhere in the world. Yeah. There's no free money. The most important thing is whenever you take a loan, you look at what is the interest rate, right? And whether the interest rate compared with what you want to use the capital sum, outweigh the benefits, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we borrow, because we say, whatever investment you want to use the money for outweigh the interest that you are going to pay, right? And hopefully that Zimbabwean government has costed that. But given the scenario, I think what I know very well with Zimbabwe is that they are looking into an interim solution rather than a long-term solution.
Because they are
Because
desperate to pay civil servants. They are struggling to
you
keep up.
and me as individuals, right? We might be looking at a budget for 1 month is acceptable, okay? And then when you talk about the government, the minimum you are saying, okay, we've got a budget of 1 year, but you still have to projected strategies for the next 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. And this is not a government that can plan for the next 20 years, especially if you've got a president who is 92 years old.
And can I just say, who doesn't talk about the economy?
Well, does he know the language? That's the way the problem is.
Yeah.
All his strategies are pronounced at a funeral. He has to wait for a gallant fighter to die. And in every respect, he doesn't talk about what he's going to do economically to create jobs, to fix the broken economy. He always vents his anger against the opposition, against the people of Zimbabwe who are calling for him to step down aggressively and retire at 92.
Yeah, and the other observation I've made is some of the pronouncements that affect the country are made in Politburo meetings, which is a meeting of ZANU-PF committee members. Why are they not done in parliament where there is cross-party participation?
Yeah, you need to understand that since 1980, when the ZANU-PF got into power, it actually came in as a communist party. And then communism started to disintegrate. Then they changed a bit to a socialist, communist type of political party. The various structures they've not changed any, and for the communist structures are still the same.
Which is why they talk about one center of power and all that.
This is why
one-party state.
Yeah, they actually tried to say we want a one-party state, if you remember, and then they reformed the Zoom to say not one-party state, etc., etc. But Mugabe still behaves as if he is leading a communist country, a quasi-communist country. Yeah, and this is where we are
with capitalist economics.
Yeah, and you look at they make a pronunciation in the Politburo, which is heavily manipulated by one person, and we have seen that. And now it's being manipulated by two people now. The second being Grace Mugabe, the little way with the wife, and there we are. So the two of them on the steering wheel. None of them is sober enough to steer such a
But one has 7 degrees and the other one has a PhD.
Well, I think I'm glad that you posed that question, and the next thing you were laughing, and you are not alone. I mean, I've never heard anybody who completed a PhD in 2 months, other than Grace Mugabe. Personally, I'm not worried about that. I'll begin to get worried if he uses that qualification to get a job or to teach. Well, I know she wanted to be in competition with Joyce Mujuru. I'm not qualified to say whether Joyce Mujuru earned that degree or not, but I don't think at the moment that's high on the agenda for Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans, they want what they promised, 2.2 million jobs, which they can't. They want food on the table, which they can't. They want a functional infrastructure, which they can't provide. They want a legitimate and functional government, which they are not and they can't provide. They want an economy which is full-fledged with the economic prosperity, and also with where there is the circulation of currency, which they can't, and this is why they are trying to inject bond notes. We don't know whether the bond notes will have an expiry date, because all bonds must have an expiry date.
And what happens after expiry?
Yes. And they are saying this is an interim. Okay? How interim is interim? Okay? For how long? They've not specified. You are going to use the bond notes for, is it for 5 years? Is it for 2 years? Is it forever? They haven't come out, because there is nowhere, anywhere in the world that bond notes can be used forever. It just does happen. And it seems this government is an appetite for using the bond. In 2008, 2009, they called it Biera check. That was the Biera bond. Okay? And now they are saying a bond note. Look, yes, there's loan notes. Okay, under the bonds. So what they've done is they've just taken the note from the loan and the bond from the Biera, and they are bringing the 2008, 2009 Biera check in the form of a note. It's the same thing.
And one other worry that I just remembered that people were worried about is the fact that you might go to the bank with your 100 bond notes. You want to go to South Africa or Botswana. You want to change it. You want US dollars. Then the bank teller might say, I can give you 8. And maybe that could be the start of a parallel black market, because they will know that this US dollar is in demand, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
So there's nothing to stop the bank teller saying there's not enough money, but we can give you, but if you accept 80 for your 100, I can give you 8.
Yeah, you are actually not being prophetic. That's exactly what is going to happen. Nowhere, anywhere in the world that you can wake up in the morning and then you fix the exchange rate to say this, this pen.
It's market forces.
This pen is 1 to 1 US dollar.
It depends on how many pens there are.
Of course, I mean the financial market is a very complex animal, right? It depends with, as I said, with speculations, with the trusts, with your GDP, GDP parity, with your exports, with your imports, and all those things. They actually come up to the aggregate of whether you can withstand the exchange rate.
Okay.
It's so easy to say today the bond is 1:1. But I can assure you that rate will not last 1 hour. Mark my words.
Because I think as it is, some people are thinking how they are going to benefit from this.
Not about thinking about how they are going to benefit.
They've got a plan already.
Well, even if you London Stock Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, Nasdaq, right? It doesn't. You don't need an hour for it to come down, right? Every second, every minute, right? This is why people are paid just to look at the money market. Every second, every minute, it's going down, it's going up, right? And they make decisions. And Zimbabwe is not an exception.
Yeah, because that same US dollar is fluctuating on the international market.
It's
I
not.
don't know whether the bond note can keep up.
It's not at the mercy of a 92-year-old president or the delusionary Chinamasa to say it's gonna be 1:1. I'm going to sleep. And wake up in the morning and it's 1:1.
Yeah, that's true.
Money market doesn't work like that. Okay? And you can see how desperate this government is. I have no idea who is advising them. Because I know Zimbabwe is not run out short of credible intellectuals with the capacity to run a small economy like Zimbabwe.
And I think that's part of the problem, because they don't engage anyone outside of Politburo, maybe.
That's where the problem is. I mean, we've got experts. We've got Zimbabweans who are experts running economies. Sometimes they are professors, lecturers in various universities, training economists, training financiers, etc., out there.
And they don't have to go and directly advise the government. I mean, if only the government could allow platforms in Zimbabwe, allow people to comment on such issues independently. And then they can take or leave the advice.
Correct.
But anyone who tries to advise them is hounded out. Out of the country.
If you look at these economies that are vibrant and working, the minister doesn't have to have the qualification to be an economist or a financier or whatever.
No,
right?
When George Osborne started here, he had no clue.
Yeah, but it's people who advise you, the technocrats who advise you. Okay, because the government comes with the policies, right? And you then take the policies to the technocrats. Say, this is the policy direction that this government needs to take. Right?
What is the best way to implement?
Indeed. And then the technocrats will then come up with the strategies to say, this is how we are going to strategize, to implement. Okay? And this is the matrix. Okay?
Correct.
So, yes, and these are the instruments of measurement. Because you still need instruments of measurement, whether you are going in the right direction and whether you are getting lost. Unlike the ZANU-PF that you wait until you can't even afford to pay your own civil servants. It means they don't have instruments of measurements, financial instruments of measurements.
Okay, so in summary, what can you say about the bond notes? Good or bad idea?
Bonds, yes. Bond notes, no. And that's a bad idea. And the problem that we have at the moment of lack of cash circulating in the country has nothing to do with absence of money. It's absence of trust of the current government. People have got money,
but they are not. But they can't trust that money in the hands of anything to do with government.
So you can bring in pound for as long as that pound, right, is being managed in ZANU-PF. They won't trust it. You can bring yen for as long as it's being trusted, is being managed by Robert Mugabe. They won't trust it, right? what Zimbabwe needs is a legitimate, free and fair elected government by the people, from the people, for the people, and the people will trust that government. And whatever money you inject in it, they will trust to use it, knowing that the government has got trust in managing the economy.
And they'll watch that government, and if that government does anything to lose that trust, then they are voted out. Another one comes in.
Yes, yeah. I think
that's a democratic process.
Indeed. I think Zimbabweans, unfortunately, for the past 36 years, 37 years, we've never had a change of government. So we don't even know what is behind Robert Mugabe or ZANU-PF. And I think there will be a few people who are actually afraid of venturing in the world of unknown out of their ignorance. But they must understand that at 92, Robert Mugabe is not a saint. Even saints die. And he is not God. And Zimbabweans will not run short of credible leaders to lead that country. Because Mugabe was born in that country.
Like anyone else.
Like anyone else. And all what we are saying is, let it be a generational thing. This generation has tried its best. They've done its best. Yes. To another generation, like in other countries.
True.
Right. Average age group in Zimbabwe, 25 years. Head of state, 92 years.
Times 4.
Explain that.
4 times.
Explain that.
Older.
Explain.
Yeah, okay. I think you've clarified a lot about the bond notes. If any questions come up from this discussion in the comments, I think we can revisit.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And, because I think that Zimbabweans, we need to start taking leadership now.
Oh yeah.
We can't wait to say the Mugabe Ajafa and all that.
No. Yeah.
People don't understand what's going on in the world, in the economy. So these discussions hopefully will help people to also get involved. If they think Zamataura, but it's not really, I know better, then we want people to come up and offer explanations.
Yeah.
Because I think we've got so many people, like you were saying, who are professors, lecturers all over the world.
Oh yeah.
But they are not talking.
Yeah.
You see, they are not talking. So
they're actually running economies of scale in other countries.
Exactly. So we could benefit from their knowledge. All they need to do is maybe write articles in the newspapers or or do videos like this one.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. I think we've got a lot more to talk about. we might produce a lot more videos than this one.
Thank you, Dereck.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you, Elliot.